This video presents the application of the Bootstrap method for parameter estimation, PE. It consists of two parts. In part 1, the background of the Bootstrap method is given. The frequentists theory of parameter estimation is shown in video 5.3. The frequentist theory is based on the assumptions that measurement errors follow a normal distribution with a mean zero and a certain sigma. In practice, however, this assumption may not be the case. For example, in a study from Punescu et al. 2015, where 5 different measurements are used, a residual analysis shows that the residuals for cellulose and lignin deviate significantly from a normal distribution, plots shown in the middle. Also, the autocorrelation plots at the bottom indicate that the errors are not identically and independently distributed, IID. Clearly, in such situations, the frequentists theory is not suitable. To deal with the strict assumption that errors follow a normal distribution, the Bootstrap method is used. The Bootstrap method works with the actual distribution of errors. Let us therefore review what an experiment means in a frequentist worldview. There is a certain underlying true set of parameters θ true. It exists, but is not known by the experimenter. True parameters are statistically obtained, along with random errors, as a measured dataset, D0. The experimenter fits the data to a model by a minimization technique and, for example, obtains measured and fitted values for the parameters θ0. However, the actual set of data, data0, is not unique due to stochastic measurement errors. That makes it likely that other estimations could occur, like D1, D2, etc. In the Bootstrap theory, the measurement errors are simulated. The procedure is to generate n data points at a point in time in order to replace the actual set of data, D0. Because of the replacement, in the newly generated datasets, a random fraction of the original points, typically 1 over e equals 37%, are replaced by duplicated original points. For each dataset, the same estimation procedure is performed. This results in a set of simulated measurement parameters, namely θS1, θS2, and so on. These will be distributed around θ0 in the same way that θ0 is distributed around θ true. This video presents the mathematical formulation of the Bootstrap method developed by Efron in 1979. Since then, the statistical theory of the method has been established and rigorously used. More information about this method and other numerical procedures can be found elsewhere in the corresponding technical literature. In this video, the Bootstrap method is applied to an ammonium oxidation batch test. A framework is provided to apply the theory to practice. The workflow contains 3 main steps. In step 1, a reference parameter estimation using maximum likelihood estimation is performed. The output is a vector of residual errors. The residual vector is plotted and reviewed. If the residuals follow a systematic pattern or contain outliers, one cannot proceed since it should have a random pattern. This may imply that the Bootstrap method is not suitable for this application. In step 2, synthetic data is generated by Bootstrap sampling. For example, by random sampling with a replacement from the residual vector and through its addition to the model prediction obtained in step 1. For each set of synthetic data, the parameter estimation carried out in step 1 is repeated, and the output with values of the parameter estimators is recorded in a matrix. In this step, the mean, standard deviation and correlation matrix of the parameter estimators are computed from the recorded matrix data obtained in step 2. Moreover, the distribution function of parameter estimators can be estimated and plotted using the vector of parameter values obtained in step 2. The results are interpreted and evaluated using knowledge from literature and process engineering. The uncertainty in model outputs is calculated by Monte Carlo error propagation, as shown in video 5.6. An application of the Bootstrap method is presented in this video. In this example, we investigate the parameter estimation shown in part 1 of the example 5.3. We use the data from batch test 1 to estimate the parameters of ammonium oxidizing bacteria. The workflow in this step is exactly the same as in steps 1, 2 and 3 from example 5.3. The output from this step is the best fit to the data and the distribution of residuals. These steps are implemented in the script file example5_4.m. "50 Bootstrap samples from the residuals, randomly sampled with replacements, are performed and added to the model. This therefore yields 50 synthetic data measurements. These are also implemented in the script file example5_4.m. For each set of synthetic data, a parameter estimation is performed, and the results are recorded for analysis. For the 50 synthetic datasets generated, this means that 50 different estimates of parameters are obtained in this way. These are also implemented in the script file example5_4.m. The results, including the mean parameter estimates, their standard deviation, as well as the correlation matrix, are in good agreement with the parameter estimates obtained from the non-linear least squares method from example 5.3. This is especially expected when the distribution approximates the white Gaussian noise. These are also implemented in the script file example5_4.m. The Bootstrap method is simple and intuitive. It does not require the calculation of the Jacobian matrix for the estimation of the covariance matrix of parameter estimators. At the same time, proper statistical theorems have been established to have a solid theory. However, there are some caveats, as outlined here. For instance, the validity of this method depends on how well the residuals represent the underlying unknown distribution of measurement errors. It starts and stops with the measurement errors. Further reading on the theory and application of the Bootstrap method is provided here. In the current folder, there are 6 files to implement the Bootstrap method in MATLAB. The main file is example5_4.m, which executes all the workflow, including the subfiles. The costf.m includes the cost function for the fmin search algorithm. The coftl.m includes the cost function for the lsq_non_lin algorithm. It is used to verify the solution of fmin search. Data_aoo.mat includes the experimental dataset. initdcond.m contains the initial conditions and nominal values. nitmod.m is the file that contains the nitrification model. Double-click on the main file examples5_4.m to open the content. First, the highlight mode is selected to execute the file step by step. Click Run and then click Step. This function will clean the workspace and figures, if there is any. Next, the experimental data file data_aoo is loaded. The experimental data contain values of ammonium, nitrite, nitrate, and dissolved oxygen concentrations. The initial conditions in the file initdcond.m are retrieved. This loads the nominal values, parameters range, and initial conditions. Next, the data to be used for estimation is selected. The indexes 1, 2, and 4 are specified, which refer to ammonium, nitrite, and dissolved oxygen, respectively. The data matrix can be viewed by positioning the cursor over the YD matrix. Next, the parameter indexes for estimation are selected. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are selected for the yield, maximum growth, substrate, and dissolved oxygen affinity, respectively. Then, the lower and upper ranges for these parameters are retrieved. The initial guess is defined, pinit, in between the lower and upper ranges. In this exercise, the initial guess starts at 1/3 in between the lower and upper range. The fmin search solver is retrieved. The termination criteria for optimization is specified by the command optimset. For example, the tolerance is 1 × 10⁻⁻⁶. Next, the fmin search solves the cost function by starting at the initial guess and using the selected data, td, yd, iy, and parameters, idx. The progression of the search algorithm is displayed on the command window. By moving the cursor onto pmin1, the optimized values can be seen. On the SSE, the sum of the square error can be seen. lsq_non_lin is executed to verify the solution. In these screens, it can be seen that the optimal solution did not change the residuals. It is reshaped into a matrix where each column corresponds to each measurement. The residuals for each model output are now plotted and reviewed. The inspection of the plots indicate that there are neither systematic trends nor outliers. Hence, we can move to the next step. In step 2, the random sampling is implemented with the replacement algorithm to generate synthetic data for parameter estimation. First, do a reference simulation using the optimal parameter values p, min, 1 obtained from step 1. Then start a loop to perform Bootstrap sampling, nboot. Display the current iteration. For each iteration, draw random numbers for each measured output variable from 1 up to nboot. Then read from the residual matrix the corresponding errors. Add the sample measurement errors to the reference model output, which provides synthetic data, simulated data, y, b, t. Then perform a parameter estimation using the synthetic data YBT using the LSQ-NON-LIN algorithm. Record the optimal parameter values for a later analysis. Iterate the loop until completing nboot simulations for parameter estimation. Visualize the results. Plot the synthetic data generated. Ensure that the data are reasonable. Zoom into the OUR data and verify that there are several lines corresponding to each Bootstrap sample. And verify that all data is normal. Plot the matrix of parameter estimates, pmin. This has a dimension nboot xp, that is the length of the parameters. Plot them both using the histogram and also estimate the density distribution, which is more accurate. Inspect each estimated set of parameters in the histogram. Verify that they follow a normal distribution. In step 3, report the summary statistics for the parameter estimation. Basically, calculate and report the mean, standard deviation and correlation matrix. First, present the mean values. Then, present the standard deviation and finally the correlation matrix. This concludes the parameter estimation problem. Do not forget to save your results. It is recommended to check the quality of the results as suggested in the textbook.